Hey guys, and welcome to a battle between Griff the Marrow Meister using the forces of the Vampire Coast up against the Dark Elves and Lotus Moon himself. Should be a pretty fun matchup. I wanted to highlight this game because it's two factions I don't play myself very often, so they don't get so much love on the channel. But anyway, let's go through the forces of the coast. Looks like in Deep Reserve we have a couple of units of Scurvy Dogs, some of the best units in the game, honestly, in my opinion. Undead super fast Cav are so good at shutting down the enemy back line. Of course, they crumble instead of break, so they can hop on top of gun lines and get rid of them very quickly. He has one unit of Mongols as well. Big damage dealers, although slightly susceptible to missile fire, as they do come in with only 30 armor, which is not good at all. But the main kind of punch of his build is in his center pocket here. He has double mortars, which can do huge work up against Dark Shards and all Dark Elf infantry. Pretty much the same as you'd expect up against High Elves. He has a zombie pirate deck hammer with polearms for a bit of protection. Double Sirens. Now, these ghostly ladies don't do the most damage, but of course, they will certainly survive an incredibly long time, and they cause terror, which is always very useful. Looks like we have a couple of zombie pirate grind mob bombers as well, just backed up behind a front line of deckhand mobs. Certainly can get some great value, as well as some handguns dotted around the battlefield as expected. We also have the Shade Wraith Gunners, so going really balls deep here in the ethereal units. If there's a lot of magic damage on the field, he is certainly going to be in trouble. These guys, though, do pretty decent long-range damage overall, and counter skirmish is very hard against them due to the fact they are ethereal. There's a Vampire Fleet Admiral with pistols, a very badass model overall. As you can see, she is prepared with her rapier here. They're going to be coming in with the usual suspects. We do, of course, have Opal Amulet for that damage resistance, as well as Invocation of Heck and Drowned Dead. So super fun build overall. Looks like we have a Gurry White as well to keep these mortars firing for as long as possible. Now for the forces of Lotus Moon and the Dark Elves, looks like on the right hand flank he does have some Doomfire Warlocks who are going to be huge in this matchup, as not only do they do poison damage, they also do magic damage, so they'll be very good up against those ethereal units. They're going to be rolling dirty with a Sorceress of Fire who is rocking Fireball and Burning Head. Now for his main battle line, he has a mixture of Dark Shards with shields, protected by Dread Spears and Bleak Swords. There's a couple of Black Arc Corsairs thrown in here for good measure as well. Even has a small flanking force on the left-hand flank with some Dark Riders, Dread Spears, Bleak Swords, and Dark Shards. So basically going what you would do, kind of classic high elf maneuver here. Loads of infantry which can slowly grind their way through the undead forces, and a ton of archers as well, which trade very effectively up against handguns, bombers, and all those nasty units. We have Malekith as well on top of his mighty dragon here, simply coming in with Gaze of Malice, Soul Stealer, as well as Power of Darkness, where he does a little bit of damage to himself, but he then does greatly improve his Winds of Magic. Looks like we do have a Burning Head coming in as we get this battle underway. So it is going to be coming and roasting the zombie pirate deck hand mobs. Looks like it doesn't really catch the Sirens, which is a bit unfortunate. It does capture the zombie pirate guardian mob a tiny bit, it would seem, but nothing too drastic. But still, getting some good work on those pirate deck hand mobs is always a good engagement overall. So it looks like the Sirens are going to be pushing out to the flank, which is not a good engagement for them, as Doomfire Warlocks clear up these hounds with the help of the mighty Malekith. Now these poor ladies are going to be taking an absolute bucket ton of magic damage, but I imagine to sneaky stab their way through the Sorceress of Fire very, very quickly here. The Sirens making really short work of her and getting some good value, but they themselves are starting to take a bit of damage. Black Oxel says have forced their way into the back line as well. Bleak Swords and Dark Shards on this flank starting to push up. Now on the far side, it looks to be going relatively well for the Dark Elves on first glance. They've pushed in on top of the bombers and are slowly carving their way through polearms. But in come the Sirens and helpful support from the Mongols, as well as those mortars, is certainly going to win this flank for the forces of the coast, which is going to help them quite a lot. They don't want to be pressured on too many flanks. I can see the Dark Elves are trying to wrap around as much as possible. It looks like Dark Shards are getting absolute crap kicked out of them here by the mortars, which are always so good in these matchups. So we do have a nice Gaze of Malice coming down, just trying to pin down some of these zombie pirate gunnery mobs as Dread Spears do start to hunt them down. There is some Sirens as well lurking, getting some pretty good value. It looks like they did try and chase off the Doomfire Warlocks for now, although if those guys come back, their magic damage could be particularly useful here. Down on the low ground, Sirens and Mongols just helping clear up this flank. Looks like Dark Shards are slowly pondering and wandering to their doom there, unfortunately, moving into close combat there up against the Mongols. Certainly not a good situation for them, and the mortars are both still active active. No pressure put on them yet. Up to 45 and 23 kills respectively is pretty decent up against someone as elite as the Dark Elves. Looks like the Shade Wraith Gunners have got their hands dirty as well, with 25 kills so far. And down on the low ground, it looks like the Scow Dogs are trying to finish off that Sorceress of Fire, realising she is, one of the kind of few key targets which can do magic damage to help pull down these Syreens. Malekith was over here to help out and support, save her for a nice counter charge does come in by the Doomfire Warlocks. Hop on top of these Syreens with a Soul Blight as well, and in comes Malekith. He's going to be slapping at these Ethereal Ladies all around. Yes, having that resistance to those physical attacks certainly does help. If it's a big old dragon and he does enough damage to you will eventually go down, and you can see they've been nuked pretty badly here. More pressure is being put on the back line. Here's a Shade Wraith Gunners take a massive bolt from the skies. Black Hawk Corsair is going to be able to carve these guys up in combat as well, relatively tastily. And the back line is starting to be pressured pretty bad here for the Vampire Pirates. The balance of power relatively even. They have managed to secure one flank with their dominance and mobility of those Mongols, but in the main pocket of strength, there are Dark Elves dotted all around the place, hunting down gunnery mobs, and a lot of these guys are summons as well, so they will start to dissipate. Malekith floating over top here, maybe coming to come and shut down some of the mortars, which I think will be a really good play. If the mortars get shut down, it's going to be very hard to bring down Malekith himself, as the rest of his forces will be able to chew their way through the gunners. Looks like the Black Hawk Corsairs did pretty much manage to finish off the Shade Wraith Gunners, now to get moving again and put pressure on the back line. And as you can see, Malekith has started to shut down this mortar, and a lovely Gaze of Malice coming down and decimating the zombie pirate deckhand mob, allowing those Dread Spears to certainly poke their way through those zombies a little bit quicker. We did have another unit of Black Hearts as well, hopping on top of the mortar, but they've been unfortunately dispatched here. The force of the Dark Elves at least, as the Mongols do push forward, get up to 67 kills, and they're going to be a bit of a powerhouse in this late game as well. They're good against pretty much everything in this build, as long as they're kept away from these pesky Dark Shards. So I'll be Pirate Guy mobs trying to swoop around here and get a few shots in before they do once again disappear into the afterlife. Malekith as well, going to be floating over top, and this is going to be really powerful here. Going to be dropping a fat Soul Seer down. Invocation of Heck has been done as a countermeasure here to try and keep these Syreens active. But in comes Malekith, and he's going to be stomping on all of these troops here. I love the little purple symbol of skulls you see. He's kind of raining over the enemy as death does seek them. In the back lines here, Vampire Fleet Admiral though still relatively healthy, and she's a decent combatant overall, especially coming in with all her nasty spells, invocations and so forth. She's also going to be relatively tricky. So the Pirate Guy mob here does start to disappear as they all drop to do their doom instantly there. They're no longer animated, and Dark Shards unleashing shot after shot now into the Mongols, which is the perfect target. As we said earlier, these guys only have a meager 30 armor. They're rather large characters as well, so it's pretty easy to hit them. Looks like the Dark Elves are starting to kind of come back and surround the enemy now, managing to finally push around that left flank, and with a ton of rallying units as well, swooping around and surrounding the remaining pirates. But they've still got a strong core here. Syreens and Mongols, both relatively healthy, are easily going to be more than a match for most enemies, as well as this Vampire Fleet Admiral, who's going to be healing up and dropping spells again. Another Soul Blight has been popped down, but there's not too much follow-up just yet. Bleak Swords and Doomfire looks a little bit slow to react here. They are going to be able to catch it while it is still active, but it has given the time for the Vampire Pirates player to drop an invocation down as well to kind of countermeasure this as much as possible. Syreens managed to get pretty much a full surround on Malekith, and unfortunately Doomfire Warlocks are kind of in the wrong position. They need to be up and over here, hunting down the Syreens, where Malekith needs to be up and over here. If they just switch positions, they'd be all good. More summons coming down. The summons being very key at the moment for keeping the pirates in the game. So many summons is so goddamn powerful. It's really useful, especially with all the invocations as well coming down and protecting the rest of their forces while these guys do some damage. Malekith going to be floating back up into the sky here as Dread Spears do start to close in, and those Mongols getting very, very danger low here. Bit of a misplay though. Dark Shards are way too close to the action here. They need to be falling back behind all these Dread Spears and so forth, and constantly reining in that Archfire. Instead, they are going to be forced away, and there is a possibility of a big fat chain rout coming here. Tons of units are breaking and routes, and that is the problem with facing so many fear and terror causing units. The Syreens do cause terror, I believe, and most of the rest of the Vampire Pirates faction does cause fear, so it's going to be nurturing all the leadership of these troops. And you can see so many of the Dark Elves are running for the hills here. If they simply stood and fought, they would comfortably win this. With the constant range fire coming in, the Mongols would stand no chance, and the rest of units would be slowly dragged down by the help of Malekith. But because they keep fleeing here, it's making them come in drips and drabs, and that's certainly going to start to help out the pirates greatly. Balance power, though, is in the favour of the Dark Elves so far. Malekith swooping over top here is going to be landing, trying to assassinate some of these poor Mongols. Going to be chucking these guys wide as well. The Sirens do start to retreat in face of such a terror. Bleak Swords are starting to run in and saturate on top of enemy troops as well. Dread Spears, but they're all fighting summoned units at the moment, which isn't really good value in the long haul. And Malekith's pretty surrounded here, getting beaten up. He's desperately trying to escape, but this very brave Mongol is trapping him here and doing some very decent damage. Malekith needs to get back up in the air and flee for your life, as he does look like he managed to escape for now. Can be given more time for the Dark Shards to get their value, and they have decent amounts of ammunition left on all three units as well. I like the spread out of them as well, so they can't all be shut down at the same time. And of course, the pirates want to stay in a blob as much as possible. Dread Spears being forced off and routed here. Mongols down to just 6 model count, but they still have a tiny weight on their healing cap, as well as the Sirens here. Looks like Dark Shards are going to be focusing them down, which is a good pick overall. Looks like a lot of the Dark Elf troops are just shattering here. I'm not 100% sure why. I guess they've been broken too many times. And the Dark Shards are simply wavering by the mere presence of such mighty foes indeed. Balance Power has now decided to go in favour of the Pirates, as their Hero Corps is going to look like to carry these guys to victory. Are they going to have enough, though, to deal with the mighty Malekith? So Mongols slowly dragging themselves forward. Looks like they are starting to deteriorate a little bit here as well. But as soon as they get anywhere close to these Dark Shards, they just break and run for the hills immediately. Source of Fire has rallied over here on the right hand flank. If she has one, or maybe like a Burning Head, a Fireball, anything, could be so key here to help get rid of these Sirens. Without the Sirens, Malekith will probably just float down and munch on this Vampire Fleet Admiral all day. She is not the Halberd version, so she does not have anti-large. And the Gunnery White as well, though, can do some decent consistent damage with his gun. Probably best to aim at Malekith and trying to finish him off. Dark Shards going to be trying to retreat here. Looks like a few more have started to rally. The Sirens have some really cool charge animations here as they kind of swoop through the sky, followed as well by these Mongols. Very scary sight indeed. I'd probably be running as well if I was the Dark Shards, but once again they just simply get terrified here. So low health, low leadership, that the terror in the late game has been pretty pivotal here in the Pirates moving ahead. They only have 36 models. There might be 1 or 2 breath attacks left by Malekith, and if he can get these guys all bunched up for a fat Soul Stealer, that could also be quite pivotal. But the Dark Shards just absolutely shatter at the mere sight of the enemy here. There is simply some Dread Spears left, as well as the Sorcerer of Fire. And Malekith, as it often is the case, is going to be trying to carry the game on his back, and he's very good at doing such things. Coming in for some nice cycle charge now, so I'm going to speed up a little bit, as it looks like it's simply going to be a ton of cycle charging coming in. A big breath attack going down on the Sirens, getting some pretty good kills overall. It looks like Malekith is coming in for the final fight. Nope, going to pop back up in the air. Might be worth staying in this fight, finishing off the Sirens and Mongols as they do start to deteriorate here, ensuring that they do go. They can't get any nasty invocations on them. But it looks like armor losses may set in here. Malekith down to just 1,400 health. He's doing huge work on that gunnery right now. He's just down to 1,500 himself, and of course Malekith punches way harder than a Gunnery White. Sorcerer of Fire not doing too bad, pretty wounded here. It looks like we are going to get a fat Soul Stealer coming down, which could turn this game on its head. It's going to be healing up Malekith, but he might break before it actually gets to kind of heal him up properly. Soul Stealer is active, but Malekith breaks before it actually has the chance to heal him up. If that had come a few seconds earlier, he probably would have won the game. That is a very close game overall, but very well played to both the players there. Let's have a little look at the end stats. So well played to Griff the Marronmeister as well as Lotus Moon, and an incredibly close game. And a massive shout out as well to the Marronmeister for sending this one in. If you want to send in your own replays, feel free to hit me up on Discord or join my Discord chat overall. But yeah, two super fun builds here. Sirens did some decent damage overall. One unit got a little bit nuked early on, but we have 125 kills and so many ethereal units. It is pretty damn risky, of course, to come up against a faction who can bring units like the Doomfire Warlocks. But together, they managed to swarm those guys and then be a real nuisance into the late game. And Mongols as well. It's one of those units, if you can survive, keep them alive, and if they can survive into the late game, their extra fear, huge amount of punch they can do, damage-wise, can certainly rack up some pretty high kill counts, as we can see, 144. And that terror into the late game just kept breaking the Dark Elves over and over and over again until they did indeed shatter. But pretty good build. It's kind of the standard stuff, I think, that you'd probably see up against High Elves as well, with mortars, good against those tightly packed formations. And for the Dark Elves, it's kind of following that High Elf meta as well, coming with a lot of cheap frontline troops and then a ton of archers in the back to try and pull down bombers, gunners, all those nice juicy targets. Malekith, as always, getting an absolutely huge bucket load of kills, 198, but wasn't quite enough there to seal the deal at the end. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please do consider giving the video a big old thumbs up. It super helps out, as well as subscribing to the channel if you are new. Anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.